The medical observation dome aboard the Varinax 4 orbital station smelled like antiseptic and ozone. Glass walls curved in a smooth arc, revealing a panorama of the purple planet Mir below. Alien medic trainees, each in their second cycle of xenobiological study, stood in clusters around a central anatomical display. The topic today? Human physiology. Instructor Melkett, a tall, lean being with mottled blue skin and a long neck that swiveled independently of its body, gestured toward a holographic image of a human heart. "This organ," Melkett said, tone confident, "is particularly vulnerable. You will note that the myocardium lacks the redundancy of our own circulatory pumps. A single blockage or electrical misfiring can result in immediate systemic collapse." A few of the students nodded. One, a younger trainee named Drell, raised his upper limb. "But humans survive these collapses sometimes. There are recorded cases in the databanks." Melkett interrupted. "Survival is statistically rare without intervention, and even then, the intervention is crude. Manual compressions, mouth-to-airway gas exchange. Most species would find this traumatic." Several students gave a collective shudder. The very idea of forcibly pressing on someone's chest until their heart restarted seemed barbaric. At that moment, the dome's sliding panel hissed open. Isaiah Whitmore stepped through, wearing a wrinkled blue flight jacket and khaki pants that had seen better days. His face was lean, weathered, and his short dark hair was still damp from a recent decontamination rinse. He looked around, then spotted the instructor. "You Melkett?" Isaiah asked, walking forward with the casual confidence of a man who'd seen one too many emergencies. Melkett blinked once, then tilted its head. "Yes, you are the human paramedic assigned for today's comparative demonstration." "That's me, Isaiah. Just call me Isaiah." "You were late." "Yeah, I had to assist with a decompression injury on Deck 7. Guy's arm looked like a balloon. He'll be fine." The students stared. Isaiah gave them a small wave, then walked to the front. Melkett gestured to the skeletal hologram again. "Perhaps you can explain the rationale behind your species' aggressive resuscitation methods." Isaiah looked at the display, then turned to the students. "All right, imagine your buddy drops to the floor. No pulse, not breathing. You've got maybe 4-5 minutes before brain damage sets in. You don't have time for a surgical suite or an augmentation pod. So you go hands-on." He walked to a table where a human training dummy lay. "CPR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation. You press the chest down about 2 inches at 100 to 120 beats per minute. You're literally pumping the heart for them." Drell raised a limb. "Wouldn't that crush the ribs?" "Sometimes we do break ribs," Isaiah said. "It's a trade-off, broken rib or dead." That clearly didn't sit well with most of the students. Some recoiled slightly. One of them covered his ocular slit with a tendril. Before Melkett could redirect the conversation, a red light began pulsing in the corner of the dome. The emergency klaxon followed. "Medical emergency," the intercom buzzed. "Deck 14, unknown species, vital signs, failing." Isaiah was already moving. "Can I come?" Drell asked. "Stay back," Melkett warned. "This is not a simulation." But Drell ignored him. By the time Isaiah reached Deck 14, Drell was on his heels. The corridor had cleared, but a small gathering of maintenance crew had clustered near one of the access hatches. On the floor, convulsing slightly, was a humanoid figure in a science uniform. His skin greenish-gray and lightly scaled, was slack. His limbs twitched once, then stilled. Isaiah dropped to his knees beside him. "Name?" he barked to the crowd. No one responded. "Forget it. I'm starting CPR." Drell moved closer, staring in disbelief. Isaiah checked for a pulse. Nothing. He pulled the figure flat, tilted the head back, and began compressions. His arms locked at the elbows, shoulders directly above his hands. He counted aloud, voice sharp and rhythmic. "All, 2, 3. Drell flinched at each push. To him, it looked like Isaiah was attacking the patient. "Isaiah, you're damaging him." "I'm keeping him alive," Isaiah snapped, sweat already beading on his forehead. "Get me an AED in Washington, D.C.?" "He's not human." "I don't care. I've studied his physiology. 2 lungs, centralized heart. This works on him." Drell hesitated, then ran to the wall unit and pulled out the automated defibrillator. He fumbled with the pads, unsure of where to place them. Drell hesitated, didn't stop compressions. "Upper right chest, lower left rib cage," Isaiah shouted between breaths. "Now," Drell slapped the pads on and the unit began scanning. "Analyzing rhythm," the robotic voice said. "Shock advised." Isaiah sat back for a second. "Clear." The shock jolted the patient's body, his limbs spasmed. Then, nothing. Isaiah resumed compressions without missing a beat. 2, 3, 4 minutes passed. The crowd grew. Melket arrived, eyes wide. "He's been doing compressions for over 600 cycles," Melket whispered. "I'm not stopping," Isaiah said, not looking up. "Not until he breathes or I collapse. Your muscles will fail. Then someone better catch me." Drell knelt beside him. "I can take over." "You know the rhythm?" Drell nodded. "Take over at my count. Ready? Switch on 3. 1, 2, 3. They swapped positions. Isaiah rolled back, gasping. His forearms burned. He forced himself to breathe deeply. "Keep going. Don't slow down." Another minute passed. "Analyzing rhythm," the AED said again. "Shock advised." "Clear," Drell shouted. The shock fired. This time, the patient gagged. A wet, rasping breath followed. He coughed violently, then blinked. Isaiah leaned forward, grabbing a bag valve mask from the wall and squeezing gentle breaths into the patient's airway. "All right, we're back," he muttered. "You're all right, just stay with me." Melket stared in stunned silence. Isaiah looked up. "Get a stretcher. He needs oxygen monitoring and a cardiac workup, fast." Drell stood, shaking slightly. You brought him back." "We did. Took both of us." Melket approached slowly. "You sustained rib fractures during that process." Isaiah flexed his shoulder. "Maybe. I'll get checked later." "You should not be standing." "I'll sit after he's stable." Later, in the med bay, Isaiah sat on a cot while a scanner passed over his torso. The technician, a quiet species with translucent skin, frowned slightly. "You have a hairline fracture on the 5th rib," she said, "and a strained deltoid." "How bad?" "You should avoid upper body strain for at least 2 weeks." Isaiah nodded. "Noted." Melket entered the room. "The patient is stable," he announced. "His name is Voss. He is already asking for water." Isaiah smiled faintly. "You were correct. The resuscitation method worked." "It's not perfect," Isaiah said. "Sometimes it doesn't. But if there's a chance, you take it." "You continued compressions for over 20 minutes. That exceeds standard human endurance." Isaiah shrugged. "Adrenaline helps?" Melket looked to Drell. "And you?" "I took over when he couldn't continue. I think I understand now. It's not about precision. It's about urgency." Isaiah leaned back against the wall. "You don't wait for perfect conditions when someone's dying. You act." Melket was quiet for a long moment. "I will revise our training modules." Isaiah looked down at his bandaged side. "Good. Just don't teach him to do CPR without warming up first. My arms feel like rubber." The room fell into a silence that wasn't awkward. It was respectful. Drell turned to him. "Isaiah, can we train with you? Not just simulations, real methods." Isaiah grinned. "You bring the dummies, I'll bring the coffee." Melket gave a slow nod. Accepted. Outside the medbay, the corridor bustled again as if nothing had happened. But inside, something had changed. The assumption of fragility had been replaced with something else, understanding. Isaiah stood, wincing as his side twinged. "Guess I'll head back to my bunk." You need rest, the technician insisted. I'll rest when I stop hearing that AED voice in my dreams. He walked out, slower than usual, but upright. Behind him, the students watched in silence, not with disbelief anymore, with respect. 3 days after the resuscitation on Deck 14, the practical rotation lab on the Varinax 4 station smelled faintly of sterilized plastifiber and warm silicone. It was late in the ship's circadian cycle, a simulated dusk filtering through the overhead panels, casting a soft amber glow across the rows of raised biobeds. Isaiah stood at the front, arms crossed, watching Drell wrestle with a set of human trauma bandages. The alien's 3-fingered hand kept fumbling with the tabs. "Too tight," Isaiah said, "and you just cut off circulation to the hand." Drell retracted the wrap instantly. This looked secure. It was tourniquet tight. You weren't stabilizing an arterial bleed, just supporting a wrist sprain. There's a difference. Drell tried again, slower this time, tongue flicking out briefly in concentration. The other students were paired off around the room, each practicing a different basic human emergency treatment. Splints, pressure dressings, airway positioning. Isaiah moved between them, correcting quietly, occasionally demonstrating with a quick, fluid motion that made the task look insultingly easy. Elkett stood in the back, silent except for a slight click every so often as he recorded notes into his wrist pad. He wasn't interfering, that was new. "Isaiah," said a voice from the doorway, breathless. "Critical intake, shuttle crash on landing bay 2, 2 humans, 4 others, unidentified injuries." Isaiah was already moving, grabbing his trauma case without glancing back. Drell darted after him without hesitation. "Stay with the class," Isaiah called over his shoulder. "I've logged enough hours to assist," Drell said, catching up, "and I reviewed human spinal precautions last night." Isaiah gave a curt nod. "Then don't freeze when it counts." They arrived in the bay just as the emergency responders were lowering a gurney from the shuttle's rear hatch. Smoke still curled from one of the landing struts. A dent near the nose cone suggested a high-velocity impact, probably during final descent. The first casualty was a human woman, mid-30s, blood streaked down her temple, eyes open but glassy. "Name's Kara," said one of the responders. "Pilot. Lost consciousness mid-docking. Might have seized. She was out when we pulled her." Isaiah knelt beside her as they eased her onto the deck. "Check her pupils," he instructed Drell. "I'll get her airway." Drell leaned in, blinking rapidly. "Unequal dilation. Left one's sluggish." Isaiah tilted her head gently, fingers probing along the base of the skull. "Possible intracranial bleed." Her jaws clenched. He slipped a thin oropharyngeal airway into her mouth with practiced ease. She gagged once, then settled. "Secure her spine," Isaiah said. "Full immobilization protocol." Drell hesitated for half a second, then moved to slide the cervical collar into place. His hands were steadier this time. A second gurney arrived. The human male was conscious, groaning, one leg twisted at an unnatural angle. "Don't move," Isaiah said, crouching beside him. "Name?" The man grunted. "Reyes?" "All right, Reyes, you're lucky. That leg's broken, but you're breathing fine. Any chest pain?" "Just my dignity." Isaiah gave a dry snort, then turned to Drell. "Stabilize the leg. Traction splint. But don't jostle him. If there's internal bleeding, we don't want to rupture anything." "I understand." "Good. Then prove it." Drell retrieved the splint from the emergency kit. He unfolded it with quiet efficiency, aligning the frame with meticulous care. Reyes winced as the device clicked into place, but the leg straightened slightly, and the tension on his face eased. "Better?" Isaiah asked. "Yeah," Reyes said. "You've got good claws, Doc." And lay beneath the thick layers of snow. "Not me," Isaiah said, nodding toward Drell. "First assist." Drell's frills flushed a faint lavender, which Isaiah had learned meant something between pride and embarrassment. A third casualty was brought in a Tharn engineer, oozing viscous yellow fluid from a wound near the shoulder. Isaiah shifted gears, instantly. Different anatomy. "Drell, stay with Reyes. I'll take the Tharn." Melkett arrived then, flanked by two other instructors. He didn't interrupt, just watched. Isaiah worked quickly, sealing the Tharn's wound with a plasma mesh, then injecting a mild coagulant compatible with their biochemistry. The engineer's breathing calmed. Minutes later, all 6 casualties were stabilized. The humans were sedated and prepped for imaging. The aliens were triaged and monitored in adjacent bays. Isaiah peeled off his gloves and leaned against the wall, jaw tight. "Did you notice the tremor in Kara's left foot?" Drell asked, stepping beside him. Isaiah looked over. "Yeah, localized seizure activity. Could mean a parietal lobe contusion. We'll get a scan. I pre-ordered a cranial series." Isaiah blinked. "You're learning. You said not to freeze. I also said not to screw up. You did both." Drell tilted his head. "That's contradictory." "Welcome to medicine," Isaiah said, dragging a hand through his hair. "You did fine." Melkett finally approached. "We've reviewed the recordings," he said. "The spinal precautions were followed correctly. The airway management was rapid. No delay in hemorrhage control. The Tharn has stabilized fully." "That's the idea," Isaiah said. "One of the other instructors questioned your choice not to intubate the pilot immediately. She was clenching. Forcing a tube might have caused more harm. I opened the airway and waited for sedation. It worked." Melkett nodded slowly. "I agree, it was the correct call." Isaiah narrowed his eyes. "Are you complimenting me?" "Evaluating your methods. Objectively." "Well, don't get too warm and fuzzy." Melkett ignored that. "Tomorrow, I want you to lead a practical on multi-species trauma management. No simulations, clinical environment only. I don't do lectures." "Not a lecture. A replicative drill, controlled but real. The students will rotate through live scenarios with medically stable volunteers." Isaiah raised an eyebrow. "You'll let them touch real patients?" "With supervision." "All right, Drell's ready." Drell blinked twice. "Wait, You've seen more field action in 3 days than some of your instructors. You're up." Drell's frills fluttered again. Later that cycle, Isaiah wandered down to the food unit, looking for something that didn't smell like boiled algae. He ended up with a protein bar and a lukewarm cup of synthetic coffee, which he sipped while watching a maintenance droid try to mop up a spill that was spreading faster than it could contain. Drell found him there. "I reviewed Reyes' scan," he said without preamble. "There's a hairline fracture near the femoral artery. He needs vascular imaging." "Already ordered. Good catch." I didn't want to miss anything. Isaiah gestured at the stool across from him. "Sit down before you fall over." Drell perched awkwardly, his tail curling around one leg. "When I first studied humans," Drell said, "I didn't understand why your species tolerates so much physiological risk. You operate with no redundancy. 1 heart, 2 lungs, no natural regenerative ability." Isaiah chewed his bar slowly. "We're not built to last, we're built to react." "That seems dangerous?" "It is." Drell was silent for a moment. "You sweat when exerting effort. Your muscles tear slightly when they grow stronger. Your bones knit imperfectly after breaks." Isaiah shrugged. "All true? And yet you keep going." "That's the trick." Drell studied him. "Are you ever afraid you'll fail?" Isaiah drained the last of his coffee. "Every single time?" "Then why do you do it?" Isaiah stood. "Because someone has to. Might as well be the guy who won't quit halfway through." He walked off, leaving Drell to stare at the half-empty coffee cup, the maintenance droid still failing to clean the spill behind him. In the silence, something shifted again. Not reverence, not awe, understanding maybe, and a question forming quietly in the back of Drell's mind. What else had they misunderstood? The next cycle began with a power grid malfunction that shorted every diagnostic monitor in the trauma bay. Isaiah had to triage a decompression sickness case using a flashlight wedged under his chin and a borrowed portable scanner that beeped at random intervals, regardless of what it was aimed at. By the time the grid came back online, he'd already administered high-flow oxygen, started IV fluids, and arranged for emergency recompression, all while fending off a technician trying to calibrate the scanner mid-use with a stylus the size of a toothbrush. He hadn't even had a chance to sit down when Melkett appeared in the doorway. "No drills today," Isaiah said before the instructor could speak. "I've been awake for 18 hours and filled someone's chest cavity with nitrogen bubbles." Melkett didn't move. "The drill has been rescheduled to tomorrow. This is not about that." Isaiah waited, one eyebrow slightly raised. "Boss has requested to see you." Isaiah blinked. "The guy who flatlined?" "Heman has recovered sufficient cognitive function. He insists he won't cooperate with further treatment until you speak with him." That was new. "Fine, lead the way." They walked in silence down 2 curved corridors and into the low-activity recovery ward. Voss lay propped up at a 30-degree angle in a translucent reclining pod. His skin still held a bluish tinge and a narrow oxygen cannula looped under his nostrils. His eyes opened as they entered. "You're the one who assaulted my thorax," he said without blinking. Isaiah folded his arms. "You're welcome." Voss inhaled deeply. "I reviewed the medical log. You compressed my chest over 600 times. I counted. Didn't feel like that many. I also read that your cardiac output likely dropped by 20% during the effort. Are you aware your cortisol levels were quadruple baseline? I was trying to keep you from dying. That tends to spike stress." Voss exhaled through his teeth. "I don't understand why. You could have declared time of death and walked away." "I could have," Isaiah said. "But you'd be in a drawer right now." Melkett observed from the corner, silent. Voss shifted slightly. "I've been reviewing human emergency protocols. They are inefficient, brutal, often medically inadvisable." Isaiah glanced at the monitor. "You're alive, though." "That's not a counter-argument. It's the only one that matters." Voss paused. "Your people choose methods that hurt the healer and the patient." Isaiah took a step closer. "We don't always have options. We make do with what we've got and act fast. Waiting for the perfect treatment gets people killed." Voss tapped his fingers against the bed frame. "I spent years learning to avoid unnecessary trauma. Then you revived me by crushing my sternum with your bare hands. You'd prefer I didn't?" Voss didn't answer immediately. Melkett shifted. "Voss, your vital signs are stable. You may proceed with your rehabilitation." Voss didn't look at him. "I will, after he explains something else." Isaiah sighed. "What now?" Voss pointed at his own chest. "Why does it still hurt? You're recovering from cardiac arrest and about a dozen cracked ribs. It's going to hurt." "For how long?" "Few weeks." "That's unacceptable." "Well," Isaiah said, "next time, try not to collapse in a corridor." Voss narrowed his eyes. "You joke about it." "Yeah, because the alternative is thinking about how close I came to failing." Melkett cleared his throat softly. "Voss, you asked for this conversation. If it is concluded—" "It's not," Voss said. "One more thing." Isaiah waited. Voss stared at the ceiling. "What would you have done if it hadn't worked? If I hadn't responded?" "I'd have kept going until someone made me stop." "Out of duty?" Isaiah shook his head. "Because I wouldn't be able to live with walking away." Voss didn't respond for several seconds. Then, "That's illogical." "It's human." Melkett turned to Isaiah. "You're needed in Bay 4. A patient from the agricultural module inhaled a fungal spore cloud." Isaiah exhaled slowly. "Fine. Voss, try not to arrest again. I'm not in the mood. I'll consider it." Isaiah left. The fumble case turned out to be a young Lauren technician with translucent skin and spiraled gill vents along her neck. She was wheezing and listing sideways when Isaiah arrived. Drill was already there, holding a nebulizer up to her face with a look of deep concentration. She was harvesting a new strain of moss for the synthesis tanks, Drill said. Someone bypassed the ventilation protocols. Of course they did. Isaiah crouched beside her. Can you breathe? She gave a shaky nod. Pulsax. Drell showed him the reading. 88% and climbing. Good. Keep the nebulizer going and elevate her head. I'll prep an antihistamine. As he drew the dose into a syringe, Drell watched carefully. You never hesitate, Drell said. Sure I do, I just do it after I act. Vos said you'd have kept going even if he didn't respond. Is that true? Isaiah injected the antihistamine into the IV and kept his eyes on the monitor. Yeah. Wait. Because what if he was 5 seconds from coming back and I quit at 4? Drell didn't speak again until the patient's breathing normalized. Later, in the corridor outside the bay, Drell followed Isaiah toward the lift. Tomorrow's the drill, Drell said. Yeah. They want me to lead a team. You ready? No. Isaiah stopped. Good. Drell looked at him, confused. If you thought you were ready, you'd miss something important. Being unsure means you'll double-check. Drell considered that. I thought humans valued confidence. We value results, confidence just makes the waiting louder. They stepped into the lift. It hummed quietly as it descended toward the lower decks. The next cycle, the practical drill went ahead. Isaiah watched from the observation deck above the trauma floor, arms crossed, eyes sharp. Drell led his team through a multi-species triage scenario involving 3 volunteers and a simulated chemical exposure, nothing fabricated, just low-dose irritants and real-time treatments under tight supervision. Drell called out instructions clearly. He delegated. He adjusted when one of his team members misplaced a monitor lead. He corrected a fluid drip rate with a calm precision Isaiah hadn't seen before. When it was over, and the patients had been cleared, Melked turned to Isaiah beside the glass. He believed it well. Isaiah didn't respond right away. He's learning to hear the rhythm, he said finally. Melked tilted his head. Rhythm? It's a CPR thing. You get the feel for the beat, the timing of the compressions. After a while, you can hear it even when you're not doing it. That's how you know you're doing it right. Melked watched the floor below, where Drell was removing his gloves. Do you believe he will be a competent medic? Teaming algorithm. It already is. Melked nodded, then turned to leave. Isaiah stayed a moment longer, watching as Drell helped one of the volunteers up from the bed, speaking with a quiet confidence not even he seemed to notice he had. It wasn't heroics that made a good medic. It wasn't strength or speed or even knowledge. It was the refusal to look away when the worst happened, the decision to lean in, to act, even when the outcome was uncertain. Especially then. Isaiah left the deck and headed toward the galley. He needed real food and maybe, if the station's systems didn't short out again, a few hours of sleep. Drell remained below, already reviewing the drill data with his team. No simulations, no guesswork. Only real blood, real breath, real life. And this time, it didn't take a human to prove what mattered.